So, how do businesses evaluate their options when they move after identifying a problem into the evaluating solution stage? There is typically those conversations around what do we need from a product? What do we need from a solution? So, typically, business will try and standardize decision-making process for key purchases. There'll be certain people involved. You may find there's procurement, finance for sure, and there'll be key individuals involved in certainly with purchases get up of a certain amount. Recently, I've seen it be as much as if it goes over 50K, somebody from, quite senior up can be involved. A last sale I did before I moved to run my own business, because it was over 100K, there was a very convoluted process that I had to go through. And in fact, my coach said to me, it'd have been easier if you just submitted 5 invoices at 99K each, because I probably could have got all of them through. But there we go. These processes are in place for a reason. Business governance is important. They like to manage their costs. You as a seller need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of the hurdles that your buyer needs to jump through. So there'll be a process. Even if it's not well defined, if it's a small business, there'll be some kind of process that needs to go through. However, when businesses are making decisions for purchases that they haven't bought before, so typically a new type of software or a different department is buying something it hasn't done, they will need some kind of support. They'll need some kind of idea of actually what typically happens, how does it typically do? And this is where you as a seller can really add value, because you understand what steps are involved and how other organizations have done it before in the past. So it puts you in a great position. So your role is to act as that guide, to help the client make the right decision for them, and ultimately progress a sale forward to something that's going to resolve their issues and create value from the business. So when you're going through this discussion, this engagement with your client, you need to get an understanding of the criteria they're using to make a decision. So what are the features that are involved that you're particularly looking for? What's your price point, delivery time, geographies, all sorts of things. But that first question, what are the most important criteria when choosing which solution you're going to move forward with, is the place to start. Always requalify, always ask if there's anything else, always ask who needs to be involved. And if there are, other people involved, which typically there will be, ask what criteria will be important to them. I mean, if it's someone from finance, it's probably a cost. If it's someone from delivery, it's probably timeframes, all sorts of things. But you need to make sure you're aware of who's involved in that decision-making unit and the kind of things that'll be important to them. Asking if you can rank criteria in order of importance is really helpful, because you start to get a view. And this will change depending on the member of the decision-making unit. But it's a really good place to start with your coach to say, right, how would you rank these? And you can even ask them, say, how would your CEO rank them? Or how would so-and-so, who's going to be a key executive sponsor, rank them? And the final question in terms of how would you rate our solution, or how would you rate what you've seen from us against these criteria at present, is also really important, because you want to understand, where are you now? Based on the job you've done and the conversations you've had, where are you right now? This data that you're collecting can then give you a really good way of moving forward with your sale. This brings us on to the decision-making unit. So having asked who else would be involved in a purchasing decision, you need to start to build a picture of actually how favorably they look upon you. So who are the key client stakeholders involved in a purchasing decision? What's their view of you? What's their view of you and your solution? So what's their view of you and your solution? Then map that information on a 2x2 grid like we have in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. Where do they sit in terms of their importance? What's their view of you? So just as a couple of examples, you've typically got a CFO, pretty important in procurement decisions, but often very difficult to get to, so they might not have a great view of you. Then you've also got a champion, and champions can move up and down, but realistically, they may well be below the power line, but they'll have a very positive view of you and your solution. So who are the other members of the decision-making unit, and where do they sit against the axes of this, in this 2x2 graph here? Once you've done that, you're then in a situation to say, right, who are my risks, and what can we do to engage them more deeply in the conversation to try and bring them on side? This is where you then need to play back and ask your champion for information as to the kinds of things that are important to them, so you can try and engage them in discussion. But either way, you need to do your best to anybody who's in that top left-hand corner, who's important, that doesn't have a great view of you, you need to try and bring them to the right. So, talking about the decision criteria, this is what a decision criteria matrix looks like. So, what are the important decision criteria for your client on the left-hand column? So, just fielding some examples: price, feature 1, feature 2, service, brand. What is their relative importance to the client? So price might be high, feature 1 might be high, feature 2 might be medium, service might be medium, brand, your brand, the brand of the organization they're buying from might be low. Those are what's important to them. And then how do you and 1, 2, however many other competitors you might think fare in order of performance against these? Now, you may need to make some guesses here based on what they've said. You may be lucky and get a really good open coach who can actually share exactly where you sit. But either way, it's good to have a view of this. You know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And off the back of doing an exercise like this, you can build a decision map. So this is where you can kind of see, right, where are my winners? So where are my capabilities high and the importance of the client is high? Where are my killers? Where the perception of my capability is low, but the importance to the client of this particular capability is high. And where are my sleepers? Where are my kind of undug chunks of gold or diamonds that we can really leverage, that are seen as something we do particularly well by the client, but currently seen as of low importance. So this is the client's perception. And then if you look at where, and we've mapped based on that capability, the decision matrix I did earlier, where some of these are, you then have a situation where you're like, okay, I know what they're looking and how they're going to decide how they buy. I have a view on where I sit against these. And I now know that feature 1, for example, I either really need to demonstrate to the client that we do this really well, or at least medium well, or I need to find a way of negating it as being less important to the client. So that's a challenge, but once you're aware of it, you can class it as a risk and you can work around it. And then the opposite of true of things that you're seen as doing really well, but are of relatively low importance to the client. So something like brand, for example. They think the brand of the business is really high, but actually we're not buying a brand, we're buying a service. So how do you then have a conversation or engage the client to demonstrate that actually there are ecosystem or kind of halo benefits to being associated with a business with a really strong brand that can add value to your client? That then becomes your challenge, your actions, if you like, your goals for that exploring solution step of the buying cycle.